strategies based on the theory of Chinese medicine, born out of her experience as a shiatsu practitioner. Understanding Your Menopause and What You Can Do About It Naturally is the book that I had read and shows women that they do not have to suffer the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause and can improve their health naturally. Andrea shows us how any woman can optimize their health through the proper use of nutrition, dietary supplements, exercise, quality sleep, and stress reduction. So with gratitude for Andrea to be here today, I'm going to turn the podium over to her. Andrea?
Wow, thank you. That's a better introduction than I could write for myself. I also feel like I'm in awe of all of your qualifications, because I don't have any of those. I've got an HND in audio video electronics. But what I do have, and for the ladies who are in Britain, I'm in Cheltenham. So I'm a bit further south than Tina and a hell of a lot further south than Sharon. But I think we've all got snow tomorrow, so that will be fun. Just before I get started on the 5 health imbalances that exacerbate and make the menopause worse, which I kind of entitle Menopause Under the Magnifying Glass, I just let you know why I can sit here and tell you about this stuff, especially when I'm, in such esteemed company. I'm a problem solver. So it doesn't matter what my career has been. I've been in radio, I've been in computer software. But if somebody tells me something is unsolvable, and there was a conundrum in the computer world, in the media world about 15 years ago that was people said couldn't be done. So, of course, I rise to the challenge, and 2 years later, we had made the undoable doable. So that is my methodology through life. I'm very practical. I have my theories, but I'm quite quick moving with them. I like to get them out there in practice and tried and tested. So I left computer career to become a full-time shiatsu practitioner about 5 or 6 years ago, 6 years probably. But I've been doing and in and around Chinese medicine, shiatsu, complementary therapies for 20 odd years. It's just, I got to the point where I thought I can go it alone. And then roll on a few years, and I was very lucky to be at a networking meeting and found out that actually all the things that I was feeling in my life, because I wasn't feeling great, I was forgetting appointments, my brain felt like it had gone, anxiety every day. I had quite a lot of insidious symptoms. So I couldn't say I was ill or unhealthy, but actually I knew I wasn't the person that I was. And after that networking meeting, I went home and I Googled menopause, because I thought at the age of 45 it was at least 10 years away and it would be hot flushes. I just knew nothing. I don't think I'd even said the word menopause at that time. To find out that day that I could tick 25 of the 34 possible symptoms of the menopause. And I felt relieved, because I thought, gosh, okay, my first thought about the menopause is there's a chemical change in my body and I just need to understand it and need to understand how to manage it. Of course, it was a little bit more complex than that, because this is 5 years on. But what it took away at that time, and what I tried to instill and help with the women that I work with, it took away the anxiety, it took away the overwhelm, it took away the lack of understanding, it took away a fear that I was declining and not being the person that I used to be, because knowledge is power. And I turned to my Chinese medicine books, because I didn't have a heat symptom. I feel the cold. I'm sat here in a woolly. You'll find me in a woolly most of the year. And it didn't make sense. And Chinese medicine, plus my career in computers, is all about looking for patterns, and that there's got to be a reason for that pattern. There's got to be an underlying cause to the symptoms and the patterns. So my very first cut of going through my books was that there was a hot menopause and a cold menopause, and that I was experiencing a cold menopause. But trundle on a couple of years, going to a lot more hormone talks, reading books, etc. I realized that my cold menopause theory was actually the decline of progesterone, and that my hot menopause theory is the quite steep and erratic decline of estrogen. So I was on the right path, but I was still building the theory. But, you know, I'd already changed my symptoms, and then I was starting to change client symptoms, and I was asking for people specifically with menopause. So I was building practically whilst altering my theories. So 4 or 5 years on, it all works, and I help women, but I was kind of at times helping women and not understanding why I was helping them. Go, phew, managed to help her, but I'm still not quite sure why. I still needed to understand the underlying causes. And it's like the universe sends me, the first lot of women that I was sent were hot and sweaty, but it evolved and it got more complex. And about 2 or 3 years ago, suddenly all the women coming through my door were later 50s, had the menopause 2, 3, 4 years beforehand, and now had menopause symptoms. Well, that didn't fit. Why are you suddenly having menopause symptoms, you know, 4 or 5 years after the menopause? So it meant I had to work harder, think harder, go back to my books, think about it, test it, try it out, practical. And then, of course, COVID hit. And what COVID did is it took away my hands. It took away people coming into my therapy room and me rebalancing them, doing shiatsu, because shiatsu is just like acupuncture, but I use my fingers. So yeah, talk about cutting your feet off. I had to literally solely rely on the supplemental side, which I was building up. And it made me focus on what is going on in the body. Why is this happening? And one day I thought, after so much research, a lot of the symptoms that women have are not menopausal symptoms, they're symptoms of other things. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I call it menopause under the magnifying glass, because as you go through the menopausal change, it magnifies any health imbalances that you may already have. And this is really the time where your body is saying, whoa, now is the time to make the change, because the menopause is coming literally halfway through your life. So have to have a good, strong, healthy post-menopause, warding off things like osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. This time of the menopausal hormonal change is the time that your body is saying, right, now you've got these symptoms, and you must think of these symptoms as your body crying out in pain. I tried to make that quite clear to people. Don't ignore them. They're pain, just in a different way. The pain is coming out as fatigue, as anxiety, achy joints, bloating, gut issues, headaches, nausea, the list goes on. So what I've distilled my theory currently down to is that there's 5 health imbalances. And if we resolve these health imbalances, and just to say for anybody with men in their lives out there, these 5 health imbalances can be in men as well. These health imbalances are what's going on in your body. And this is why women can pass through the menopause without any symptoms, because they haven't got these imbalances. And then obviously the worse the imbalances, the worse the menopause. So I always have to write the 5 down, because when I read them out, I forget one. So even though I do the talk, I can still forget one. So I'll just list the 5, and then I'll just speak a couple of minutes on each. So the first thing is the nutritional depletion that is caused by cortisol, or by the actual stress of the menopause. So the change on your body causes a stress. It exacerbates a hormonal release, adrenaline and cortisol, and then this leads to a nutritional depletion. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the lack of essential fatty acids in your diet. Number 3 is liver toxicity. Number 4 is gut health imbalance. And number 5 is adrenal fatigue. And if we sort out those 5 things, your menopause will actually just disappear. One day your periods will stop, but you won't have the symptoms. So it sounds simple, but then of course, under those 5 headings, there's probably about 101 changes that need to be made. But I don't want to scare people with saying 101 changes to menopause. I say, let's look at these 5 things, balance these 5 things out, and you will have far less symptoms. And of course, it depends on how severe the symptoms are and how long women have been having them, especially when we come to adrenal fatigue. So going back to number 1 then, which is the nutritional depletion. Very simply put, and I'm sure Deb could actually go into the science of all of this, but I'll reduce it to one sentence. The stress of the hormonal change means adrenaline is released more easily. So this is starting with the adrenals. When adrenaline is released, cortisol is released. Cortisol is the relaxation hormone, but unfortunately there's too much of it now, and it literally munches up any extra nutrition or the nutrition that we did have in our body. And this is why suddenly women can feel like they've gone over an edge physically. Suddenly the fatigue hits, suddenly the brain fog hits, and suddenly aches in their joints and their muscles, because the cortisol, where they've just been getting by with their daily diet, and in this country specifically not taking supplements, their health was just okay, and now the cortisol has stepped in, and so that depletion has become very apparent. So literally this is the first step, is actually to get people onto basic supplements. And for me, basic supplements are what I call the building blocks of the body. It's about rebalancing your body chemistry, and for some women it can happen very quickly. So it is about putting in vitamins and minerals until you get to a point where actually a lot of symptoms start disappearing. So this brings me on to number 2, which is the lack of essential fatty acids. And when I started investigating this, I was shocked that the actual symptoms of being deficient in EFAs are the same symptoms as menopause, pretty much, about at least a third of them. And that just blew me away, because I thought, okay, so if we've got enough omega-3s and 6s in our diet, all of these symptoms will go. That's a third of the menopause symptoms can disappear by taking essential fatty acids. So again, it's brain symptoms, it's brain fog, overwhelm. What else have I got under my symptoms? Breast pain, fatigue, depression. So many things. And we know in this country specifically, and I know to eat fresh fish in America is more difficult because I've got a few US friends. So managing to eat 2 or 3 times a week, really good quality oily fish, or I'm fish oil intolerant. So I just, as soon as it touches my stomach, it's straight back up. So I hadn't been having my essential fatty acids in the shape of omega-3s. I get it through now nuts and seeds and a supplement. So essential fatty acids, women in this country don't realize the importance of that food group. So that's another area of symptoms that can just be wiped away in a matter of weeks if they start getting omega-3 and 6 in their diet in its various forms. So when I talk about most of the menopause, and 4 of the 5 of my top areas in health imbalances, 4 of them are deficiencies. So lack of nutrition is a deficiency, lack of essential fatty acids is a deficiency. But when we come on to number 3, liver toxicity, we step into the area of excess. So when we are dealing with deficiencies, we're adding things into the body. And this is a little bit of Chinese medicine. But when we're dealing with excesses, we have to take things out of the body. So liver toxicity is more to do with all of the heat symptoms. So really erratic, irritable mood swings, itchy skin, nausea, headaches, migraines. So all of the heat things, night sweats, and to a certain degree, hot flushes. Because actually hot flushes and night sweats in Chinese medicine have different root causes. So when we're dealing with liver toxicity, this is where we very much get into the realm of what you're eating and what we need to do to help your body. So very quickly, I look at the liver like its car engine. And this car engine has to clean itself every day. And it does this in the middle of the night between 1 and 3 a.m. thereabouts. And this car engine can get clogged. And what clogs it is life. It's processed foods, sugars, stress, emotions. There's so many things that clog up the liver. And so the more clogged it is, the less efficient it is at running. So night sweats are directly related to how clogged up and how dirty your liver is. So in literally, I had a lady buy my book a week ago last Thursday, and she emailed me on Monday. So she'd had the book for 3 or 4 days, and her night sweats had gone and her sleep had come back. So the liver is incredibly forgiving, but we do need to cleanse it, and we do need to cleanse it regularly. So that's point number 3, is sorting out liver toxicity, and that is going to remove a lot of the heat symptoms, not necessarily hot flushes, because they've got a different root cause. So the 4th one is gut health imbalance. And I love this one. I love that Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, said all disease begins in the gut. And again, it's the gut has been getting by on the food that we've been eating, but you know what, processed foods, sugars, all of these things, antibiotics go and kill the gut bacteria. And so what women need to learn is they need to replace that gut bacteria. So I always call them gut bunnies, try and make it cute and fun so that people think I've got to feed my gut bunnies. So not only do women need to put back in a variety of bacteria, you then need to feed it. And once you start getting your gut health in balance, again, fatigue, so many brain symptoms are linked to the gut. What else have we got for gut? Bloating, actual nutritional uptake, and then the more esoteric symptoms like body odor and bleeding gums, and the more important symptoms like a lowering immunity and increased allergies. So again, why do women get so many allergies when they get into the menopause? Because of the lowering immunity, because of the stress and the changes, and just quality of gut bacteria, because maybe by the age of 45 we've killed it all off with pizzas and red wine. So, you know, again, we come back to looking at the diet. So the 5th health imbalance is the biggie, and it's the chronic, insidious, how we've lived our life one, and it's adrenal fatigue. It's probably the one that most people call up about. It's the one that people don't want to hear how to resolve. And it's the one that was hitting those women in their mid-50s, years after the menopause had passed. And adrenal fatigue can hit anybody at any time and any sex, because it's how we live our life. And adrenal fatigue is kidney energy in Chinese medicine, and it links back to essence. So going back to the car engine analogy again, now we're going to look at the fuel tank. When you're born, you are born with a full tank of fuel. As you live your life and as you age, that tank starts to empty. We can top up the tank. We can never completely refill it, but we can keep topping it up by good food, good rest, and good air. Those are the 3 things in Chinese. But what happens is we've been emptying our tanks at a faster rate than previous generations because of keeping busy careers, family, having it all, the 80s and 90s culture. I was in media in London, so, you know, late nights, alcohol, you name it. So all of these things deplete our life tank of energy because we only have so much. So when adrenal fatigue, like I said, it's insidious and chronic, and then it comes to a point where it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And the main symptom that comes after fatigue, and it's now considered the number 2 symptom of menopause, is anxiety. And this, and also with adrenal fatigue, you can't get temperature control, so hot flashes. And then other knock-on symptoms are because that you're so busy releasing adrenaline and cortisol, there's no room for the adrenals to release estrogen and progesterone, which have now declined or declining in the ovaries. So this leads to flatlined emotions and to loss of libido. So the way we know we're turning adrenal fatigue around is when we see those symptoms start reversing, because they happen. It's a domino effect. So to reverse it and to heal it, it's the dominoes are standing up in the same order. So I always say any signs of libido coming back, then you know you're on the right path. So adrenal fatigue is the underlying one of all the other symptoms, really, because it actually comes full circle back to that nutritional depletion caused by cortisol at the start. And like I say, men can have these symptoms as well as women. So if men suddenly suffer some sort of, nervous breakdown, because so many things can feed into adrenal fatigue, anything that we consider trauma. So car crashes, broken bones, emotional loss, there are so many things that can feed in and cause adrenal fatigue, that it can happen at any point in life. So this is why I now truly believe, and I have not even started on the loss of estrogen, have I? That's the menopause and beyond. These 5 health imbalances are the ones that are magnified as you're going into the hormonal change and going through the hormonal change. And that's why I come back to, it doesn't matter where it happens in life. Where I'm seeing it a lot right now is women who are having babies later. So maybe babies between 38 and 42, they're not coming out of post baby with more fatigue, with energy. They're going straight into a fatigue cycle, probably because they were busy career women who stopped to have a baby later, and it's just, it's the knock-on effect. So I truly believe right now that actually, if we look at these health imbalances and sort people out as to the best of their ability, that actually the menopause is just a day in your life that you look back and go, oh, I haven't had periods for 12 months. And that's really how it should be. And that will reflect more how nations in the East, like Japan, have the menopause. And I think I will, have I done about 20 minutes, Liz? Your microphone's off. Microphone.
There we go. Andrea, if you still want to talk for a little bit, you're fine. If you have a little more to say, that's just fine.
No, I that for the 5 health imbalances, I think I'll leave it there, because if I start talking again, then
Okay, so do you
question?
Okay, so then right, we'll open it up for some questions. And ladies, what I'll do is, I can see all of you. I can't see the gals that don't have their cameras on, but certainly you can, if you want, write in the chat. But otherwise, so I'll keep an eye on the chat for those of you that don't have the cameras on, for if you have a question for Andrea. But otherwise, okay, Barb has a question. Well, just raise your hand. I'll see. So Barb's going first. Okay, go ahead, Barb.
Thank you, Andrea. That was also interesting. I had a question in regard to the gut bacteria. You said to feed it, and you went through the symptoms, but what do you mean feed it?
Oh, okay. Yes, probiotics and prebiotics. So a probiotic, and I use a liquid one, is basically the bacteria that you use to repopulate what's called the microbiome in your gut. And the best probiotics have a variety of strains. So in our country, we've got some high street health shops, and you can go and get a probiotic, but it only has 1 or 2 strains of things like lactobacillus. But when you look for a good probiotic, and like I say, mine's liquid, it has 15 strains of different bacteria. And it's proven, and I'm sure Deb actually knows far more about this than me, actually, but the variety of gut bacteria is the key to good health. So putting in 1 strain isn't enough, but putting in 15 strains is good. But then you have to feed them. So you have to feed your gut bunnies. So this comes in the form of vegetation, fiber, and grains, and the kind of things that the bacteria in your body feed on to stay healthy and to work properly. So really, it's a probiotic plus vegetables.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, does anyone else have a question for Andrea? Okay, Adrian does.
You're still muted.
I raised my hand. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I saw you. Yes.
Okay. I heard a lot of things that Deb and Liz and I talk about frequently, about your liver, about a couple of other things. And I know you've reviewed our products. Do any of our products resonate with you?
Oh yes, I did. And all in different ways. But the one that I really thought I meant to talk about when we said about adrenal fatigue is Lonicera lift has rhodiola rosea in it. And one of the main, when we're talking adrenal fatigue, when women have anxiety, what I try to teach them is to separate the mind process of anxiety from the physical reaction of anxiety. And I felt this very much in myself. And I thought straight away when I understood about adrenal fatigue, adrenaline, which is just a chemical, is squirting too easily into my gut, causing this squirmy sensation, ... and off you go into anxiety. And so if you can remove the whole head mindset space of, oh my gosh, I've got anxiety, I can't breathe, because that mindset of anxiety will exacerbate anxiety, because the more you fret and worry about it, the more you'll create it. So if we can then draw a line between what you think is anxiety and what is actually physically happening in the body, then in your Lonicera lift, you've got this rhodiola, and another great one that I recommend to most of my clients is one called ashwagandha. These are what are called stress adaptogens, and they help ease that kind of stress reaction on the body. And when I started taking ashwagandha specifically, that squirting sensation, it just stopped almost overnight. So women who are dealing with anxiety can be dealt with twofold. One is to take the stress adaptogen to stop the physiological reaction. And second is mindset, the way of looking at it. And just with those 2 points, most women that I've met, if not all of them, have overcome their anxiety. So yeah, in that respect, I think the Lonicera that has this stress adaptogen in it is actually a really good product if you're in the whole area of adrenal fatigue and anxiety.
Right. I have a quick question. I'm going to ask Teresa. Teresa, is it okay with you if I read your comment in the chat? Because is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, so Teresa wrote in the chat box, she said, I didn't realize I had gone through menopause until I went for my annual GYN exam and remembered I had not had a period in more than 6 months. She never had a symptom. And my story, Teresa, is very similar. I mean, I realized it because I had, I knew that I was starting to not have my period. But I did not have any anxiety about it because I understood it was something that was going to happen. And I do remember getting a little bit hot in bed and that kind of stuff, but I didn't have this focus and where I was having the stress that it was going to happen. And so maybe that alone just helped, maybe not having the symptom. And like for you, Teresa, it just obviously didn't even cross your mind and you went through it and never had a symptom. So, you find that too, so much of it can be, and like my mother, she never went through it. Or she went through it, but never, I don't remember her doing it as a child being raised with her, then talking about there was never anything about it. And same thing with my grandmother. So I don't know, can that be hereditary?
Possibly, but there is a very specific reason why I think women are suffering more at the moment, and it's the generational thing. It is we're the generation who could have it all. So we've worked harder and we've used up more energy. And on top of that, the largest number of inquiries I get are from exercise instructors. Because you can actually do too much exercise, and too much exercise leads to actually adrenal fatigue, interrupts sleep, and leads to a lot of anxiety. And then there's also the mindset, because asking a fitness instructor if they can halve or alternate their exercise and swap it with yoga and qigong, you just hear silence on the end of the phone. Because you are dealing with a mindset, and we've got this whole culture of you must exercise, you must look like this, you must eat that, and that's really hit the last generation or so. So I do believe it's worse right now, and I believe it's worse. The whole anxiety and fatigue is actually worse for women who, like I say, do a lot of fitness, also women who have a lot of career stress. Those are the two main factors because they are targeting the adrenal fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so Tina has a question.
Hi.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. Andrea, I downloaded your book back in June, July, sometime. I can't remember when. And I started just trawling through it and taking it step by step and going through and found that a lot of my symptoms just disappeared, which was great. Like the heat at night, the sweats, that kind of thing. Some just never vanished, and I'm still working on them. But I found that as one dissipated, another one popped up. It was like, oh, for God's sake. Okay, right, let's look at the book. What do I do for this one? Yeah. So it seemed like as I was stepping down one, another one was popping up. It was like that children's game where you hit the things down and another one pops up all the time. And I kind of reached a point of, right, I found that it was taking over my life. Everything, every day, all I was thinking about was, what am I going to do today? And how much exercise shall I do? What am I eating? What have I taken? And it started to really overwhelm me, the whole thing. So I just sort of stepped back from it all a bit. But I found that I can cope with a lot of the symptoms because they're just symptoms, and actually they're not going to ruin your life. They're just a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. But what I found is that, like, my gut health now is amazing. My anxiety is up and down, but I can deal with that, as you were saying about separating the physicality from knowing what's going on. I can do that. That's fine. I can deal with that. But as a lot of these symptoms have disappeared, all my hair started falling out. And it was just like,
okay.
What's that about? So I look up what's going on with your hair falling out, and you think, oh, well, I've dealt with that and I've dealt with that. So do you think that adrenal fatigue is fundamentally the underlying issue on all the other 4 points?
It is. I mean, what I haven't actually spoken about today really is progesterone and estrogen, which are also, in the mix. What I found with myself and with my clients is you go through plateaus. So you notice you've got some symptoms and they either level out or you resolve them. Hopefully you resolve them. And then after anywhere between about 9 and 12 months, there's another drop off and then another plateau. And that's what I found over the space of 4 or 5 years. There was just a plateau, drop off, plateau, drop off. So I think you're probably going through some of that, and as you're resolving things. Hair loss specifically is linked to estrogen decline.
Right.
And in Chinese medicine, the quality of your hair is directly linked to the kidney essence, which is actually the adrenals, and therefore adrenal fatigue can exacerbate hair loss as well. So it very much likely could be that some of the lighter or more surfacey symptoms you're dealing with, but actually, yes, there's still adrenal fatigue. And the one thing I forgot to say is, whereas, the lady that dissipated her night sweats in 3 nights, that's fantastic. When you're dealing with returning your adrenals to health, I never know whether to use the word healing or not. As a shiatsu practitioner, I'm not allowed to use the word healing, but when you're looking at healing your own adrenal fatigue, let's say, the biggest factor is time. And by time, I'm talking about years, and I'm talking about 2 to 3 years. I've known women that have ended up in bed with fatigue, and it's taken them a year to get out of bed, or 6 months or something. So it's not to be taken lightly. And when some women come to me and they're expecting that quick fix still, and we can fix some symptoms very quickly. You know, you take the vitamins and minerals and the aches and pains go away, but the underlying adrenal fatigue is a long, slow process. It was a long time coming. Basically, it was created by life. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's too much to ask that it takes 2 to 3 years to turn around something that might have been 20 or 30 or 40 years in making. And I also think trauma in childhood.
I was going to say that's what I'm dealing with. Yes,
You're dealing with that, are you?
Yeah. So I've got a therapist that I see once a fortnight now, and we've been dealing with that for about 3 years. And whilst that's getting easier as we go along, it just really links in with all the research I've done about adrenal fatigue, and yet you read and the medical institution don't even recognize adrenal fatigue. So it's really, it's one of those weird ones, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm following everything you do, but I know that probably underlying it there is this thing, you know.
Yeah.
So, what's the best bit of advice? What's the best thing I could do as a first simple step to solve, to sort of just get me on the path?
Do you still, are you on a plant-based diet, or are you still, okay.
I don't eat meat or dairy.
Yeah. I mean, I am still a meat eater, but the switching to plant-based means you lighten the load of, you know, protein being cleansed by the kidneys. So it's that. Are you taking any stress adaptogens?
I take ashwagandha.
And do you have a good night's sleep?
It phases. Sometimes I don't sleep at all for months, and then it'll just stop and I just go to sleep. It's really annoying.
Do you journal? So you look for
No,
patterns?
I don't. But I sort of, I'm a sort of creative. I'm an artist, so I tend to draw, or you know, that's my kind of outlet rather than writing.
Okay. Now the journaling, the point of the journaling is more to look for the patterns between why you're sleeping and not sleeping and what's going on in your life. But actually, Sharon just popped up about reflexology, but also I'm shiatsu. So shiatsu and acupuncture, both based on Chinese medicine, and they can work on the kidney energy as well. But you know, it's time and it's quality relaxation and time. I think you're doing all the things you need to be doing, but yes, you've also got to give yourself.
Just impatient.
Right.
It's quite difficult to not be, isn't it? But
yeah, but okay, that's good. Thanks. Yeah, as long as I think, as long as I feel like I'm doing the right things, I'm quite happy to be.
Sounds to me. And so, to be honest, whilst you're going through the fluctuation, you will have had the progesterone decline. That's been going on, but then you'll be going through the fluctuation. We don't just decline estrogen; it's a very erratic decline. Hence, you still got the fiery symptoms around time of whether or not you have your period. You were still going through that cycle. So until you probably come out the other side of that, and your body is leveling out from the sheer stress of the hormonal change. There could be a couple of years left on that. And like I say, it's a tougher hill to climb if you're dealing with childhood trauma.
Okay.
So the best thing you can do is give yourself TLC and not beat yourself up that this is taking time.
Yeah. Okay. I've come to realise it's a slow process. But I've only just realised it's probably been going on for about 10 years anyway, but I just didn't really recognise it until lockdown.
No, you don't. It's these things that suddenly, normally when women come to me, I say, compare yourself to how you were 3 years ago. Are you different to that woman? And if they say yes, and I go, well, then it's perimenopause, it's adrenal fatigue. This is where we are. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Good. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Do I see anybody raising their hand?
Otherwise, I'd love to hear what Deb has to say, because she's going to have far more knowledge than me.
Right. Yeah, so Deb, I was going to say, because Go ahead, if you've got some feedback on this too, because I know you've gone through some things too.
Yeah, I have. I went through menopause at 43 and I had every symptom. And so that was very difficult. And I was taking supplementation. So I might be over exercise, like you mentioned. I thought that was really interesting. And that might have played some part in it, and stress with whatever I had going on in my life at the time. But one thing that I found so interesting when you were putting out these 4 points is that they're all so intertwined.
Yes.
And it's amazing because, just even how important getting that good bacteria in your gut, and how that directly correlates to ADD and ADHD and autism, and focusing, and attention it's huge in your gut. And so many people don't understand that there's so much of a correlation between the brain and the gut. And
Yes.
then I think about the ingredients in Lift and how it calms the brain. And if it's calming the brain, then it's going to affect your cortisol levels. It's going to affect your adrenals, So it's just so, you're right.
Catch 22. It's all catch 22. I was thinking earlier, because I was thinking, I taught liver kidneys. And then I thought, but it's, those kind of diagrams where you have the overlapping circles. And it really is like that. So you've got liver, pancreas, and spleen all in one circle. You've got the kidneys and lungs in another circle. And then you've got the small intestine, large intestine, stomach in another circle. And then they all interlink. So I always say it's an accumulation of small changes, a hell of a lot of small changes to bring about the big change. And for the order of my book, which I've just popped a link to.
Thank you.
The order of my book, hot flushes are right at the end. And the reason they were right at the end when I did the first cut of the book was because I don't know how the hell you really get rid of hot flushes, but I know if you do everything else, they just go. But that is, and the second edition of the book, it's actually pretty much the same, because it's the 101 changes, probably not even 101, but the 30 or 40 changes you make that help the liver, that help the kidneys, that help this, that, and the other, actually together means you're then regulating temperature better and the hot flushes ease. So when I work with women on my 28 days to a happier, healthier menopause, by 21 to 28 days, the hot flushes have gone, even though we've not worked specifically on the hot flushes. So just an accumulation of everything else. And actually, Deb, you've just reminded me of something I didn't say. Was one of the things, and this goes for journaling, Tina, so it might help you. I have a saying that your food today is your mood tomorrow.
Yeah.
And because so much of the brain is actually in the gut, and so much of what you think in your head affects your gut, and vice versa, that if you have a bad day, carbs. I always wonder why I had sluggish Mondays. And, I'd had jolly Saturdays. I'd still do drink alcohol, and over excess Sundays, and it accumulates on a Monday. But on a Wednesday or a Thursday, my brain was really clear when I'd gone back to the clean eating. So it just, all my practical things I've done to myself as well. So for my art, I've suffered. But it's, I have to try it on myself, then I have to try it on whichever guinea pigs I have around me as well. And then those guinea pigs sometimes pay me as well, which is fantastic. But it does mean that I can say things are tried and tested with a variety of women, with a variety. I'm always slightly scared when I meet my next group of women, because I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to be faced with this time? And will I be able to do it? But they're doing the work. I'm just giving the suggestions and the guidance. But do you know what? Luckily, it's always those women that seem to be the toughest cases that have the biggest turnaround.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they're so out of balance that their body is like, thank God you're putting me back in balance. So they get the results.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Does anybody else have any either comments or questions?
Just want to say thank you, Andrea. That was really, really useful. And as I did put in there, and a few people have picked up, the adrenal fatigue is really hitting post-COVID as well. So it's that it's rising so much, isn't it? So we've got to keep an eye on that as practitioners.
I think it's adrenal fatigue, or as it seems to have been labelled at the moment, burnout, is going to come to the forefront of health in the coming years. And like I say, I don't think it matters the age, because I think probably I've got to the precipice of adrenal fatigue 2 or 3 times in my life. Because if you break down at something and then you blub for 48 hours, I think you're probably pretty close. And I've been there a couple of times. So I've noticed in health magazines, they're now saying, you know, working burnout is a thing. And actually it needs to be more than a thing. It needs to be more than just this. And it doesn't just happen with work. Well, you know, if your work is an exercise instructor, it's going to happen there. If you're in corporate banking, very stressful, jet-setting lifestyle, it's going to happen there. And as Sharon's rightly said, post-illness fatigue creates a chronic fatigue. So people who are getting into the realms of fibromyalgia and ME, these are all the bodies getting into a fatigue state. There's always a kickstart to fibro. People can normally always pinpoint the day it started, and that day is when your body has just broken and just said no more. Unfortunately, what's happened is they've missed the health warning signs up to that point, and then maybe some trauma. I think somebody was just on a train and the train did an emergency stop, and that was the day their fibro started. So although I've specialised and drilled down into the menopause, I now see it opening back out again, because I think, like I said, the menopause is actually just the hormonal change magnifying that our health, especially in the UK, is not great. But we turn to other countries where you turn to where they have Mediterranean diet, where they have the very fishy and soya-based diets. Their health, their longevity through life is so much better. And there's barely anything in the Chinese medicine books about menopause because they don't have it. Also, that's why I've had to look at the menopause, not forget the label. It's what are the symptoms? What are the symptoms? Mm-hmm. And that goes for anything in health.
Right. Wonderful. Andrea, this was just great. This was really, really interesting. And
glad you enjoyed.
Last thing though, I have to laugh. My father's wife, when she was going through menopause, and she's kind of wired up anyway and is a realtor, but she would walk around. She found this fan on Amazon, battery operated.
Oh, I know the ones with the
like a necklace in front of her. I said, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "I'm on fire. I need a fan." And so she couldn't go anywhere without that fan. Or then she'd carry one in her purse. She'd be somewhere, and she was just like going like this, like crazy. So this makes me laugh thinking back about that with
I'll just leave you with one other thought about how your menopause affects you based on whether you are traditionally more of a cold person or more of a hot person. Mm-hmm. So if you were traditionally a hot, and I always say, what's the difference? If you're stood in the middle of winter and you're in a blouse and other people are in 3 jumpers, the person in the blouse is the hot person. Mm-hmm. If you were traditionally a cold person throughout your life pre the change, mm-hmm. Then you're more than likely to feel the perimenopause and have the exacerbated fatigue, anxiety kind of symptoms. If you're traditionally a hot person, you know, the person running around, lots of energy, always in a t-shirt, even when there's snow outside, mm-hmm. They might fly through the perimenopause, mm-hmm. and hit hot flushes and sweats like nobody's business. Mm-hmm. Or they may pass right the way through and only hit the wall when they've used up their energy, and then they're hitting adrenal fatigue, which is why it's so important, I think, for us to get out there about doing the right kind and the right amount of exercise so that these symptoms don't hit you later on post-menopause.
Great. Well, ladies, this has been just wonderful. It looks like we are a couple of minutes right before 2:00. We like to wrap everything up on the hour. So I'm just so thrilled to see so many of you here from all across the world. And Andrea, this was just fantastic. It was so nice to see you again. And I sure appreciate Adrian bringing you into our lives.
And Andrea, we will be putting your contact information in addition to this. Grab this link, folks. And Andrea can do Zooms anywhere in the world.
Right.
It was lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much. It's been really, really good to talk to you. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right, ladies, have a wonderful rest of your day. Yes, and we'll see you in the next Knowledge is Power. Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.